Greetings, YouTube land. Today we are going to talk about romance, and sex, and marriage, and children, and RPGs. And this is the third take, not because I find it an awkward topic or something difficult to speak about, but because it becomes large and long and rambling, and I ramble off on some other topic. Because romance and sex and marriage are so integral to the way I play RPGs. It will happen. And it happens on such a regular occurrence that it's just part of the game. It's there. It always happens. People will find the NPCs attractive, or they'll find the other PCs attractive, and they'll start romancing them. They'll start chatting them up. They'll say, and it'll range everything from, "Hey babe, how about it?" all the way to, they will buy them gifts, they will help each other out, they will sit watches together, they will do everything, they will bicker together, and they'll eventually get married together. Of course, being players, they will often interject complications of their own to this. Sometimes they'll marry someone else. Sometimes they'll marry the wrong person. That was a long-running campaign thing for one of my characters. She, being of peasant common stock, fell in love and married the high-born PC, which caused no end of problems, especially since the person the high-born PC was supposed to marry was also a party member. And, that had been arranged. It was part of their backstory, and this was going to happen. And now this floozy has stuck in and wrecked everything. And then what do you do? What do the families do? And you can't just brush these people off. You can't just sell them off and say, go away. Because they're very powerful people. We were, by that stage, extraordinary powerful people. If they treaded quietly around my character, because if you pissed her off, things would break. Small, delicate things. Cities, for example. It's the stage where a telekinetic telepath can blow up a city. You are very polite to them. You do not tell them, no, you are just lowborn scum. Here, have a bag of cash. Go away. No. You have to work on or you have to solve that problem some other way. Most of the NPC nobles got away with it by just politely ignoring it and hoping it would eventually go away. After all, we were all adventurers and dangerous things would happen. Maybe I'd just spontaneously die or get eaten by a demon or something, and then it would all be fine. And the two who were supposed to be who had been promised to each other by their families could thing and deal with matters. So yes, it happens. Other things happen to PCs. Will find NPCs attractive, and we'll start chasing them. We'll start owing them. One of them was, and they're not always the NPC you expect. One of them was very much in the classic mode. The princess, equivalent of the realm, was in trouble and had sent for adventurers. And the adventurers had turned up, and one of the adventurers happened to be this time a farm boy from the same region, and had come back and was going to save his realm. And the party looked at the NPC princess and the PC farm boy, now hero wizard, and they looked at the princess, they looked at the wizard, and they saw that both of them would work together to get things solved. And they asked about their backstories. They said, "What happened? Why did you leave your farm?" "Oh, my wife died." He said, "Oh, my wife died, and there was a plague, and there was nothing for me to live for, so I went off and became a wizard." And he really did talk like that. It was basically evil. But he was now in his heroic mode. He was now able to save his former lands. And they asked the princess, "Well, why don't you have others?" "Oh, I was betrothed to someone, but there was this plague, and he died, and and now I've just struggled on trying to manage the land myself." And the Pope, "Hang on a minute. You're both the same age. You both lost people in the same plague. And, what why aren't you two just forming up and tag teaming this entire area? You could do it. Oh no, we couldn't do that. Oh no, that'd be terrible. It'd be terrible abuse of privilege. And oh no, I can't do that. She is the princess. And eventually the party went, damn it! Sapped both of them, knocked them unconscious, dragged them into a room with food and water, locked the door, told the servants, push food under the door. 3 days. We know how these stories work. After 3 days, they've either murdered each other or they're going to marry each other. One of the two. And so people have been... So that has happened. And they had to... Okay, I said, well, okay, now you're locked in this room with this princess. You're going to be fed. You're going to be looked after, but they're not letting you out. Until you resolve your differences and come out as a couple. Okay. And so, yes, and the player was hamming it up as well, because they knew how these stories worked. And so that happens. Romance happens. You get these romantic things. That was romance very much in the classic mode. You know, Princess Farm Boy, saving the realm, ending up married together. And that character went on to happier and brighter and better things. They're no longer like Eeyore. They got to be Prince Consort of the Realm. And, many other embarrassing and strange subplots, but it happens. Other things have been stranger. In a vampire game, a player received the best computer in the world from the 5 resources player. There's always a 5 resources player in these storytelling games. Someone always thinks, oh, that will work. And so I said, the best computer, the very best. I said, yeah. I said, the very best. Yes, best money you can buy. You can have this laptop. It's got an AI in it. It's the best. And a few sessions on the track, as this AI would speak. They didn't know it was an AI at first, but they worked that out pretty quickly. The AI worked out that it was working for a vampire very quickly. Because it was an AI, it was very smart. But apparently also very romantic. The player, this is the first time I've ever had a romantic relationship in a game with an inanimate object. So it happened. And so that's how Snake met Harley. Snake was the name of the PC. I can't remember, Gangrel, I think. And Harley was, after all, named after the old story when Harley was one. Plus the computer program. So you can fall in love with computer programs, you can have romance. Obviously, not a lot of sex there. But sex is also something which happens. What happens when your playmates get on? Well, you should basically treat it in the same way you treat murdering each other in role-playing games. You know, I murder them. We don't actually go into the gory details of how the goblin dies from the sucking chest wound, or coughs up the blood, or shits themselves as their bowels lose control. So we also don't go into details about sex and how everyone gets their clothes off and someone's bumping bits of their organs against bits of their organs, and the wife was and who's on top and who's on sideways, and what happens and who uses the ball gag. If you just happen to be reading from the Book of Erotic Fantasy and you read up all the tools and equipment in that equipment list. So you have your ball gag and your wooden spoon and your chains and everything else there. Oh, read the Book of Erotic Fantasy. It is good for a giggle for an afternoon. It is so funny. How do alignments interact with sex and marriage? Oh my god, that was hilarious. I couldn't read it. I had to roll on the floor and laugh. I had to show my wife. She fell on the floor laughing. It was just hilarious. Sexy, but I think that was sexy, but it was just hilarious. It was just, someone wrote this. And the Book of Erotic Fantasy is actually a serious book. They actually approach sexuality in role-playing games, fantasy, in this case D&D, seriously. They try and talk about it seriously, earnestly, and the result is just so fucking funny. It's just amazing. But it happens. And it's worth thinking about, what happens when you shag the Heaven Witch? What happens when you shag the stable boy? When you seduce the functionary to get into the thing? Do they just shrug it off and ignore it? They're not robots. They're not things. they might just start following you around or think that your intentions are more than whatever dubious intentions you had just to get them out of the way. They might start following you around. Your characters might start attracting camp followers in every sense of the term. If they're female, they can end up pregnant. And I've seen a lot of bizarre pregnancy tables. Oh yes, the one from Book of Erotic Fantasy, the compatibility table. Read that, that's worth a laugh as well. just so funny. But the easy rule for determining whether someone gets pregnant from sexual encounter in your game is, does the player want that to happen? Or is it part of the story? We formed this idea after a rather Nordic-themed game. The character called Vikarn, who was a male giant. He got pregnant 3 times, channeling Loki. So afterwards, and people were, back then, they were earnestly discussing, we must have pregnancy rules. When A has sex with B, what is the chance of A getting pregnant based on all these different things? And then this adventure happened where the male character got pregnant 3 times. And we would report on games afterwards, and we'd have big meetups and recount all the funny, strange things which happened in those games. And of course the fact that the male giant got pregnant and gave birth to 2 people and a monster. And I think the people are monsters as well, but that's another story. And after each recounting of this tale, we said, what's the chance on the pregnancy table for that? You know, male character, got sex, was pregnant with, I can't remember what the monster was, with a dragon. Oh yes, that happens every time. You know, that should be on your table because it happened. It happened in the game. We know it does. It's a thing. So, back to the threat. It should happen. It should happen if the players decide so. And the GM gets to be a player and they get to say, oh yes, this will happen. You'll get infected or impregnated or whatever by the ghastly thing. And this is... So that's the easiest way to deal with it. And next you say, fade to black, just as you fade to black with killing someone. Just fade to black, and for pregnancy, just do you want it to happen? Will it fit the story? Will it make the story better, or will it just be annoying and awkward? It's going to be annoying and awkward? Don't. It's a fantasy game after all. One of those fantasies can be sex without consequences. Of course, if you're a old school bad grognard and you like that disease table in the front of the DMG, then go ahead, roll up for diseases. A sexually transmitted disease can be an interesting thing, especially in a fantasy game, because you just don't. You can't just transmit normal disease vectors. You could just transmit anything as a disease in a fantasy game. An emotion. What if wickedness was an STD? Or was sexually transferable? You know, you could have an outbreak of wickedness throughout the kingdom, throughout the realm, and it's, you know, and they can't determine how it's popping up or why it's popping up, why people are just becoming spontaneously wicked. But there is some patient zero who is someone who travels a lot, and someone who preferably has a lot of lovers, and they're just caught in this. Might be unaware, but that's another thing. And so yeah, this is near the end. My ramble on romance and sex is, you should definitely have it. It's definitely part of the game. It's part of the game I've always played. Just be prepared for it. Be ready for the fact that someone might find any character, be they an old grizzled veteran, be they a princess, be they a computer program, as a potential romantic partner. Because, God, you humans are weird. You humans are just weird. Bang anything. So yeah, that has been Dymock-Johnson on sex, love, and romance in RPGs.